Hey everybody, welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. I'm Rockin Robbie Billups, and it's time for a Robbie's Top 5. Today I'm listing my top 5 favorite Warren Ellis comics of all time. That's right, everybody. Thanks for checking out the video. I am Rockin Robbie Billups, and one of my favorite authors of all time is Warren Ellis. And a lot of people ask me all the time, what are my favorite Warren Ellis comic books? Well, I did some revisiting here lately, and I want to go ahead and list my top 5 favorite Warren Ellis comics. Let's get right into it. At number 5, we've got Moon Knight. From 2013 into 2014 from Marvel Comics, it had artwork by Declan Shalvey with coloring by Jordie Bellaire. Moon Knight is it is the most recent addition to this list, but it's absolutely fire. Everything I love about Warren Ellis, crazy bonkers concepts, great ideas, a way to reimagine stories and kind of dust things off and make them relevant to today. Moon Knight is like that. I've never been a huge Moon Knight fan. I tried multiple times to get into Moon Knight, and it always kind of just left me feeling kind of, whatever, right? But when Moon Knight relaunched in 2013 and Warren Ellis was in charge of it, I lost my mind. He adds in the idea of Mr. Knight, multiple personalities. This is something that's inherent to the character of Moon Knight, but Ellis takes it to another level and makes it really, really work. He only did 6 issues, and he's benefited by Declan Shalvey being on the artwork, especially with Jordie Bellaire on the coloring. The artwork is fire. Each issue of the 6 is its own single issue story, and it's dynamic, it's kinetic, it's fluid, and it's bold, and it's daring. And that's something I absolutely love. Great, bonkers, wild, out there sci-fi ideas. You're going to see a lot of them on the list right now. Warren Ellis has done some great superhero work. This is the only superhero work, not quite, but it's his only mainstream superhero work that appears on this list. This Moon Knight run is so strong to me. I go back and revisit it and reread it all the time. Those 6 issues are absolutely fire. They're amazing, and they're some of the best superhero comic books of the modern era. At number 4, we have Metropolitan from Helix and Vertigo Comics, basically DC. It started in 1997, it wrapped up in 2002. Metropolitan is basically the book that made Warren Ellis's name. He had things before, but this was what really made people start paying attention to him. He introduced the character of Spider Jerusalem. He's a journalist in the not-so-distant future. Mankind, humanity, they've gone off the rails, everything's messed up, government conspiracies, technology, it's been infused with humanity, there's this craziness, right? And what's crazy is that when you read Metropolitan, you gotta think to yourself, this was written back in the late 90s. He was predicting things that would happen technologically and of course with society. Absolutely on point. Warren Ellis is a futurist, and he always likes to kind of look into the future and see where technology is going to take us, how humanity's response to that technology is going to take us, and he's always very, how should I say it, skeptical of the official story and what the governments want to kind of force feed down our throats, right? I really got a great sense of distrust and amazement and a sense of wonderment when I first read Metropolitan. Spider Jerusalem is a great character. He is instantly recognizable with his shades, with his bald head, with his suit. He's somebody who I really absolutely in my entire life have always kind of looked up to with Spider Jerusalem. Warren Ellis does a great job with this series. It's probably one of the most long-form Warren Ellis stories there is. Usually Warren Ellis is short, sweet, right to the point. Metropolitan, he kind of gets to play around a little bit and explore some situations and ideas, and it really helped him out as a writer and helped me out as a reader and helped me out as a human here on this earth, stuck together in this technological prison that we all find ourselves in, right? Read Metropolitan if you haven't already. At number 3, we have The Authority from 1999, written by Warren Ellis, of course, and drawn by Brian Hitch. We did a whole episode of Comics Revisited about Warren Ellis's issues of The Authority, which are number 1 through 12, the characters of Ginny Sparks, Midnighter, Apollo, Jack Hawksmoor, Swift, the Doctor, all that stuff. It spins out of his Stormwatch run, and I love his Stormwatch run, and it's definitely a top 10. but it's not a top 5. Authority is where it peaks. Authority is where it lives. It's about a superhero team who goes out there and does what you thought superhero teams should have done this entire time you've been reading superhero books. You've been thinking, shouldn't they just not care about all that stuff and just go and fix the problems and take out the bad guys? That's what the Authority does. And they find themselves coming up and putting themselves in this position of authority, right? And there's some great, nice, like dynamic, there's some really great thought that's put into that in just 12 issues. You basically get 3 stories, but they hit so hard, they hit so explosively. This was the start of cinematic comic books. The way comic books were told throughout most of the early 2000s and even into today, the very cinematic approach to comic book and that widescreen sense of scope and action, that really starts with Warren Ellis and Brian Hitch on The Authority. It's a very influential work. It's a sentimental work in the comic book organization, in the comic book community. It's one of the best, and it's probably one of Warren Ellis's best attempts at writing superheroes that's ever been done, because he writes superheroes the way that he would write any of his other characters, and it works so flawlessly. Jenny Sparks is a standout character. She's absolutely amazing. She's on fire. That book's on fire. It gets tragic. It's subtle, but it's still very direct, and it's incredibly violent. When Authority #1 came out, and I picked it up off the shelf and read it for the first time, because at that point, I had never read Stormwatch. But when I read Authority #1, it blew my superhero world apart, and from that moment on, superhero comic books could always be different. They could always attain and reach and strive higher than they had in my previous idea of what they could do. The Authority, one of his best books. At #2, we've got Global Frequency, released from 2002 into 2004. Only 12 issues of Global Frequency made it out, but it is one of Warren Ellis's best comic books ever. WB tried to adapt it into a series. I really wish this would come out into a series, because I was talking about how Authority kind of brought this cinematic approach to comic books. Well, if The Authority is his blockbuster action movie, Global Frequency is his great television show. It's what 24 wanted and wished it could be. It's what most television shows wish they could be. TV shows that focus on the idea of stopping terrorism wish they could be Global Frequency. Each issue had a different artist. You have people like Steve Dillon. You've got Glenn Fabry. You've got Chris Sprouse. You've got Lee Bermejo. You've got so many great artists working on this book with Warren Ellis, because that's the kind of appeal that Warren Ellis has as a writer. Each issue is its own story, one and done. And what it is Global Frequency is this organization that spans the globe. It comprises itself of 1,001 agents spread throughout the globe. They're all experts on their field. So when something happens, say there's a black hole about to erupt in someone's head, it's going to destroy a city. If you've got some kind of outdated Pentagon program that's going to destroy the majority of the world all of a sudden, if you got these kind of things that happen, the Global Frequency comes onto the scene. They call up the experts that are needed, that are near, that are right there and available, and it works. And this would work so well as a TV show. I'm begging somebody to please make a TV show out of Global Frequency. You could keep these stories going. Warren Ellis is a very structured writer. One of my favorite things about him as a writer is that structure. If you look at his books, even like the more recent Wildstorm, if you even look at his TV work like Castlevania or something like that, you can definitely see why he gets those television gigs, is because he's a very structured writer. And he can even write a Bible out for a series that will have other writers just kind of filling in the blanks. You know what I'm saying? Just coloring by numbers and making it through. Warren Ellis is an expert at structure, keeping a story tight, significant, and relevant. And Global Frequency is one of those books that when each issue ends, when the whole conflict gets resolved, it's it. You don't need any resolution for the characters or anything like that. Sometimes people will look at a Warren Ellis book and they'll be like, oh, I just hated how it just ended. That's something that Warren Ellis does, and it really starts hitting its stride with Global Frequency. It's a lesser-known work, I have found, by Warren Ellis, but it's one of his absolute best works. It's fantastic. If you love everything else on this list, but you've never read Global Frequency, do so. Links down below. And at #1, Planetary. Come on, y'all. Planetary has to be my favorite Warren Ellis comic book, because I've already said it so many times in my life and here on the channel that Planetary is my favorite Warren Ellis comic book. It's kind of a superhero comic book, but kind of not. Imagine that every piece of fiction you ever read from the 20th century is real and it happened. Planetary is about the group of people that go out and discover these ideas, find out what really happened when it comes to Doc Savage, or the Fantastic Four, or Godzilla and the rest of the kaiju monsters, things like that. We did a whole episode about Planetary on Comics Revisited. Definitely check that one out, and the previously mentioned Authority video if you want to get a little bit more deep into my thoughts about this. The Planetary, though, is just Warren Ellis' best book. Each issue is its own story, but there is an overarching full story that comes into perfect fruition and clarity as the story progresses. It's 27 issues, if I remember correctly. It started in 99, it ended in 2009. So when people start complaining about delays in comic books, I always laugh, and I'm like, you know, we had to wait 10 years for 27 issues of Planetary, so you know, Doomsday Clock was nothing to me as far as wait time. John Cassidy was the artist. Amazing stuff. He switched and shifted up his style for every single issue to match the appropriate fictional analogy that they were doing. And Warren Ellis also changed up the way that he wrote these stories. You got Elijah Snow, you got Jaquita Wagner, you got the drummer, you got interesting characters, you got dark takes on the Fantastic Four, on ghost Hong Kong movies. You got dark takes on the pulpy Golden Age heroes like the Shadow and the Lone Ranger and Doc Savage and all that kind of stuff. It's brilliant. It's amazing. It's so fantastic. Each issue is one of the best single issues of a comic book ever. And then when you tie it all together, it's amazing. One of the reasons why Global Frequency is not #1 and Planetary is #1 is that Global Frequency doesn't really have an overarching story that kind of encapsulates the entire thing. Just 12 issues, but 12 amazingly precise and different and unique issues. 27 issues of Planetary that are amazingly precise and intricate and nuanced. But there is one story that's being told, even though they all act in and of themselves as their own story with their own points and their own thoughts about what's going on in the world previously, in the past, currently, right now, and into the future. Warren Ellis is someone who really projects into the future. If you've never read his non-comic book work, I highly recommend that you do so. Crooked Little Vein, The Gun Machine, and Normal. 3 amazing novel and novellas that are absolutely fire and fantastic. And if you're stuck at home during this quarantine shutdown situation, read up on some Warren Ellis. These are my 5 favorite Warren Ellis comics. He's got those 3 other works. And if you want more, just let me know, because he's done a lot of TV work. He does Castlevania, for instance. He did the Blade anime that I absolutely love. It's so fire. He's done a lot of work, and he's amazing. And he's got even more comic book works, and I almost feel like I need to do another top 5 video of top 5 Warren Ellis superhero comic books, but now we all know that the Authority would be #1 and Moon Knight would be #2, because I don't count Planetary. Anyway, that's my top 5 favorite Warren Ellis comic books of all time. Highly recommend that you check them out. There are going to be links down below to Amazon sites where you can buy these at a great price and help support PCP at the same time. But if you really want to support us, you can join us over at patreon.com/PCP, where you can unlock exclusive content and early access to videos and audio content. Thank you guys so much for checking out the video. Let me know in the comments below what's your favorite Warren Ellis work and why. Really curious to keep this conversation going. He has an amazing body of work that can really keep you entertained throughout all of this COVID-19 nonsense, right? Anyway, thank you so much for checking out the video. Please do like, share, and subscribe. I've been Rockin Robbie Billups. Thanks for rocking with us. Keep on reading.